Thorofan presents The Great Lasix Debate! Howdy everybody, this is Doc with Thorofan, and there's one thing that's been on everybody's mind over the past couple of weeks. It has been everything that's been going on out in California, from the horrible fatalities out there, to the track being questioned, to the Stronach Group's decision to basically ban all of race day medications that then has been pulled back a little bit to have a phase-out period over the next couple of years, specifically in regards to the use of Lasix. And this seems to be the biggest wedge that's going on in the industry right now, and we at Thorofan are all about providing the proper, most accurate, and factual information for all of you out there, so we decided to create what we like to call the Great Lasix Debate. We are going to look at Lasix and exercise-induced pulmonary hemorrhage, commonly called bleeding in horses, from every angle. We're not going to offer an opinion, we're just going to offer you the facts of what is known and what is not known, and there are certain things that are not known, and then you can make the decision yourself. So we are going to start out this series with a segment we like to call Opening Statements, where we look at exactly what EIPH is and exactly what Lasix is. EIPH, exercise-induced pulmonary hemorrhage. Let us first break that down word by word. Exercise, meaning that this condition only occurs during mostly strenuous exercise. Induced simply means to be brought about by or caused by. So in this case, the strenuous exercise is bringing about the condition. Pulmonary simply means the system involving the lungs and the blood vessels that are traveling through it. Hemorrhage just means to bleed. In the context of horse racing, EIPH is meant to describe a condition where a mild to moderate amount of bleeding occurs in the lungs of racehorses when undergoing strenuous exercise such as a strong workout or race. The bleeding can usually only be detected by endoscopic examination unless blood is seen in the nostrils of a horse, a condition called epistaxis. In most cases, EIPH is not meant to describe a condition where the horse suffers such a large bleed out from his or her lungs that they suffer an almost instant death on the track. It is an important distinction, as those cases with massive blood loss are due to ruptures of a much larger blood vessel in the pulmonary system and is separate from the condition we will be referring to here. EIPH is graded on a scale of 1 to 4. What level on the scale a horse falls into depends on how much bleeding occurs and where the blood is found when the horse is scoped. Scoping a horse merely means a long tube with a camera on the end, called an endoscope, is placed up one of the horse's nostrils and then into the trachea or windpipe of the horse to look for evidence of bleeding. Before we go over the grading, though, a quick anatomy lesson. As the horse inspires air, it first travels up the nasal passages, past the sinuses, through the larynx, into the trachea, then travels through one of two main stem bronchi that travel to each lung. Then those bronchi branch out further through smaller and smaller tubes called bronchioles, till they reach the smallest of the individual air sacs in the lung called alveoli. It is in these alveoli that the bleeding from EIPH occurs, but more on that in a bit. So now that you know the anatomy, let's go back and look at the grading. Grade 1 is considered to be presence of one or more flecks of blood or two or fewer short and narrow streams of blood in the trachea or mainstem bronchi visible from the tracheal bifurcation. Grade 2 is considered to be one long stream of blood or more than two short streams of blood occupying less than 1/3 of the tracheal circumference. Grade 3 is considered to be multiple, distinct streams of blood covering more than 1/3 of the tracheal circumference with no blood pooling at the thoracic inlet. And Grade 4 is considered to be multiple, coalescing streams of blood covering 90% of the tracheal surface with blood pooling at the thoracic inlet. The thoracic inlet is merely an anatomical term for where the trachea enters the chest cavity. Grade 4 is also considered to be the only grade that can be visible with the naked eye, as it is often where one will see blood in the nostrils of the horse. So remember these grades when in future parts of this series we talk about performance that is or is not affected by EIPH, and at what level some will treat for EIPH. So what is the scientific reason that EIPH occurs in horses? It all goes back to those air sacs. These alveoli have minuscule blood vessels called capillaries that are running all around them. and these capillaries are individual red blood cells that are looking to pick up inspired oxygen and dump carbon dioxide to be exhaled out of the lung. Without getting super technical, it all has to do with pressure gradients that drive these two gases across an incredibly thin membrane that separates the blood from the air sacs. Considering that a horse that is going from rest to strenuous exercise can increase both their respiratory rate and heart rate by factors of 5 to 10 times, the amount of pressure put on these incredibly thin membranes becomes too much to bear in some cases, and they break, causing blood to fill into the air sacs and in some cases travel further up the respiratory tract to the bronchi and the trachea. This bleeding starts in the area of the lung that sits closest to the kidney area of a horse, or the caudal dorsal region. The true reason some horses suffer EIPH and some don't is still not completely understood. We'll be talking about exactly how all of this bleeding affects the horses and their performance in the next few segments. So that is exactly what EIPH is when we talk about the Great Lasix debate. So, what is Lasix? Lasix, or Salix, is a trade name for a drug that has the generic name of furosemide. Furosemide is what is known as a loop diuretic. This means it works on a specific portion of the kidney known as the loop of Henle. The kidney of any species has many functions, but one of the most important ones is working in various ways to keep hydration of that animal in the proper range. It does this by controlling how much fluid and minerals are filtered out of the blood and excreted in the urine. Again, without getting super technical, this area of the kidney is basically designed to reabsorb enough water, electrolytes, and other minerals to be able to keep the body properly maintained at normal hydration levels. It does this by using various mechanisms, both passive and active, to either remove more of or collect more of this water and minerals as needed. Furosemide works by blocking these mechanisms to cause more water, sodium, chloride, and potassium to be sent through the kidney and to the bladder to be urinated out. This all means that an animal will urinate a much larger amount of urine after administration of furosemide. In the case of the horse, after it is administered, a horse may produce in excess of 6 extra liters of fluid in the form of urine. A fact to remember as we move on in this debate. Lost in that urine as well are various electrolytes such as potassium, sodium, and chloride. Another important fact to remember as we go through this debate in various segments. So that is the important mechanism of action of Lasix that you all need to be aware of as we go on with the Great Lasix debate. There you go. You've got all the information now, all of the basics and the knowledge on what EIPH is, the various grades, as well as exactly what Lasix does. And I want you to keep all of that stuff in mind as we move forward in this series, talking about all the different facets of race day medication, specifically Lasix, and its effect or not effect on bleeders. So stay tuned for our next segment, which is going to look specifically at exactly how EIPH may or may not affect the performance of racehorses. We'll see you then.